Hey guys, Stu Darling from Unstoppable Force. Welcome to the podcast. Do you know what? I believe we can all break out of mediocrity. We can all reach beyond what we thought our limits were. And that's what we talk about on the podcast. We talk about being unreasonable. We talk about raising our standards. And we talk about delivering the ultimate sacrifice again and again. Enjoy. Okay, this episode, surfing and Christianity. Who knew it was a thing? Put it together, you get Christian Surfers, a global organisation who basically just hang out on beaches, in the ocean, on surfboards, and talk about the faith. Building relationship through surfing. And on this episode, we've got Kirk Bayer, who is the director of Christian Surfers for Australasia. He travels across New Zealand. He travels to Taiwan. He travels to the islands to surf. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Force TV and the podcast. This is an honour, this one. Kirk Bayer has joined us. Kirk is an old friend of mine. And we have he's now moved to Gisborne. As you know, I'm in Nelson, in New Zealand. But Kirk is area director of Christian Surfers. Who knew that was a thing? Kirk, how did you get involved in Christian Surfers?
Well, when I was a teenager, I grew up surfing and loved surfing, and obviously loved God as well. And who knew that there was such a thing called Christian Surfers, which is a bunch of people who love God, love people, and they love surfing. And so this is a group that I heard about locally in Wellington and joined the Tahiti Bay Christian Surfers as a young grom, and just had amazing opportunities as I was sort of growing up through my teenage years to be able to be part of different projects actually around the world. I got invited to be a surfer from New Zealand heading to Nias in Indonesia, and we did a 12-day boat trip when I was 17, and I could not believe that it was happening. It was one of those pinch yourself kind of moments, and there was a bunch of pro surfers on there. Bethany Hamilton's one that people might recognize, and here was I, this this just excited grom from Wellington, New Zealand, on this boat trip with all these pros from around the world, part of Christian Surfers, and we were actually filming a video, a DVD that went inside of the Surfer's Bible, which is a Bible that is printed, the New Testament. It's not any different kind of wording, but it has testimonies of surfers inside of it, hence the Surfer's Bible.
Yeah, we probably need to get our heads around this just a little bit. It's your traditional Christianity, where most of us came from. Is get up, it's put your clean shoes on a Sunday morning, and you go to church for an hour where you're Christian, then you leave and sort of just live life as normal until it's time to go to church again. Now, I'm simplifying that, I know, but I mean, Kirk, you and I have had conversations about people leaving a church service and walking straight into the car park, having a fight about where they park the cars. That's how that's how this can sometimes, how Christianity can sometimes manifest itself. And then you tell me that Christian Surfers, I mean, it just help us get our head round how even just the whole Bible, how we can relate the Bible story, the Bible message to what you do as a director, but also how Christian surfers share the message of God while being long-haired hippie bums with a surfboard and sex wax.
Well, if that's the standard, then I don't pass because I've lost all my hair, and and I'm not able to be a hippie bum because I've got 4 children that I have to raise. And I can't just go surfing all day, every day. But Christian surfers, I guess what does it mean to be a Christian? And yep, you've described one version. To me, it is far more authentic and real than just a turning up to a building once a week on a Sunday. It's actually a lifestyle. It's actually a life lived well, and it's a life lived with faith, and a faith that is a daily, everyday kind of thing.
But that's a bit unreasonable, isn't it?
It can be. It could be. Yes.
It's, the version that I gave was the I sense as it was my upbringing, that was the easy version. It was reasonable. It was just the way things morphed into being. What you're talking about is an unreasonable version of this, isn't it?
Well, I think it was the Christianity that was always meant to be, and because we're human, we've sort of turned it into something else. And I think it's been butchered a lot over the years, and it's it's hit mainstream media in a way that I wish it hadn't. And yet there is still there's still a version of Christianity that I think is real, it's raw, and it's personal. And it's not just personal, but it's meant to be done in community with others. And that's where Christian Surfers comes in, is that it's a community of believers who love their sport, love the ocean, love surfing, obviously connect with God out in the water. But it's an opportunity to be able to share your faith through the sport that you love. It's an opportunity to be able to share your faith through teaching surfing or going surfing or even just hanging out on the beach. It's, the mission statement for Christian Surfers is that every surfer and surfing community would have opportunity to know God.
How do you translate that? Teaching surfing, and I've had a surf lesson, and I was completely focused on. Well, actually, at the time, it was in December. It was off Santa Monica Pier in California, and I met my instructor, and he spoke about the ocean. He spoke about this big board in front of me, and I looked over my shoulder, and what he hadn't mentioned were the 3 black fins that just happened to be off the end of the beach. And I went, off the end of the pier, and I went, when were you going to talk about the sharks? And he went, dolphins, you idiot. No, okay, fair enough. So my head was so full of whatever I was going to do, and the ego that this was going to be easy, which was knocked out of me very, very quickly. My head's so full of all of that. How do we then introduce the message of Christianity to, and look, I mean, this is going to sound very biased, but to folks who are so focused on the ocean and the next wave, how do you execute on that mission? That's the question.
Well, I think surfing's one thing, but a life lived is constant. And stuff happens in life, and people often need people to talk to, and they need opportunity to see another way. And that's where, for me, it's all about relationship with people and being approachable and living a life of integrity, living a life that demonstrates the very thing that you proclaim to know. And Jesus says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And so my goal in life is to live my best way of trying to follow Him.
So surfing is the vehicle through which we establish relationships and therefore share this. I think it's I did a workshop last week, and people were floored when I said that leadership is service through acts of love. And they were giving it, I've never heard that in a leadership workshop before. And I went, yeah, well, that's why we're getting leadership wrong at the moment, because we've missed the point that it is all. And then we go on to talk about how do you create that love? How do you build that love? Well, you do it through building a relationship with every single person you meet. And that then answers, I think, my question. Because yes, getting up on the surfboard or you're catching that wave or whatever the language is, all of that is a vehicle to build a deep relationship. And actually, when you're uncomfortable, when you're in the ocean, when you're on a mountain, wherever it may be, there is an opportunity for a deep relationship there. Is that where we're coming from?
Absolutely. what you said before just reminded me of a story. I once worked for an organization called Bernardo's, and they said, would you mentor young men? And they said, we've got this young man who has just leapt across the principal's desk and headbutted her in the face. And so he's now being stood down from school for a while, and he just needs someone in his life to just, get around him and listen to him and, sure, eventually talk about the behavioral stuff. But there was a lot of layers that we needed to get down through first. And that's what I loved about surfing, because I said, hey, Jordan, do you want to go surfing? And he was like, oh, yeah, easy, take him out in the ocean. And the ocean is a great equalizer. And, this young man who's all hard and, bravado and thinks that he's tough gets slammed by a wave. Instantly, he then seeks for help and wants to be taught and so all of a sudden I was able to teach this young guy how to surf, and we ended up every Wednesday afternoon I'd pick him up and we'd go surfing, and then we'd get a couple of dollars worth of hot chips from the fish and chip shop afterwards, and we'd talk life, talk story, and eventually he'd start to ask me about my life and decisions I've made and why on earth would I choose to do the things that I'm doing. I wasn't getting paid for that. That was just because I had a heart for young guys that, were broken and needed help. And so, it was a great opportunity, and surfing was a vehicle to be able to build relationship. And I don't know, it shook off all the other stuff.
You've just reminded me of when we lived in Canada. Every month there would be a ski day, where the school would just empty out into the local ski resort, which was tight. I mean, even smaller than Ruapehu, tiny little place, but great for the kids to be out there for the day. And with my skiing experience, I was invited along, and once I'd passed the principal's test of not being quite the lunatic she thought I was, I was given the naughty kids to take skiing. And all they wanted to do was, oh, sir, can we go through the forest? Can we do that? And I get, yep. And you get that look back going, oh, I'm not sure I really meant I wanted to go through the forest. Now you said you wanted to go through the forest. We're going through the forest. And at the end of each day, they would come back quiet. One, because they were shattered, and two, because they'd just done stuff that they'd only ever spoken about. It was all the bravado that they'd spoken about in the past. And they just went, no, this is it. And you create that relationship. I think it's fascinating. In Northland in New Zealand, they've just done a report about issues in the police. And they're going to spend a whole load of money, and they're going to bring a bunch of people in because they need to rebuild trust. And I completely agree with them, but you can't just walk in and build trust. The story that you've just shared, it didn't start with trust. Yeah. Trust was the reward that both of you earned from your time together, I think.
Absolutely. Everything moves at the speed of trust, hey? And trust is something that takes time to build relationship and to almost, especially to young people, you got to prove yourself. And part of proving myself to that young man was just turning up every week. And we'd go out in good surf, and we'd go out when the weather was horrific. And, you get freezing cold together in the ocean, and then you laugh about it afterwards, and you're able to talk story. And so this is what I love about Christian Surfers, is it's a platform to be able to do life together, to share story, to be able to serve. A lot of Christian Surfers has been around for 45 years, and it is international. And one of the key values of Christian Surfers is servanthood. And so, as a group of people, they love surfing, and they love getting together each week, and, they might be doing Bible studies and things. But on the weekends, they'll often be running surf comps for young kids in their area, or they might be serving alongside other surf comps and providing support to the local board riders, or in the local surf clubs. It's being a presence, it's being a witness, and it's demonstrating the very thing we proclaim, which is we love God and we love people. And what a cool way to be able to do that through the thing that we love in the ocean called surfing.
The first time I heard about Christian Surfers was when you said that I've got this role, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a thing. And then Liz and I were in California earlier on in the year, and we turned up at Pismo Beach, which is just north of Los Angeles, and there they were. There was a surf competition, and there were Christian surfers, and it was, wow, this is bigger than. So this is a global organisation. How does it exist? How is it charitable? Is it what is it?
It's charitable, and all of the staff, fully support raised. So when I was offered this role as the Asia Pacific director,
how wide is your remit?
Well, throughout Asia, it's like Japan and Korea and Taiwan. I got to head to Taiwan last year, right through Indonesia, and even in Sri Lanka. They've got a local Christian surfers that's starting up in Sri Lanka. And then, of course, the Pacific Islands. They get amazing waves through there. So Tahiti, Samoa, Fiji. So it's a pretty big third of the world.
So this is your job, is basically traveling this part of the globe. Right. So back to my question. If this is if this is a charitable organisation, how do you go about all of that travel? I mean, I'm quite sure it's all business class.
It's definitely not business class. But everything's, to me, it's living a life of faith, right? And so when we really, my wife and I, Mel, we felt like, man, this is an opportunity that we feel invited to partner with what God is doing and through Christian surfers. And so they offered us this role. And then, that part of it, they said, you've got to fundraise your salary. And I said, oh, God, how am I going to fundraise my salary? And all of a sudden, people that we know from around where we lived, but also all around the country, started calling, or people, we started connecting with them, and people were like, man, God just put you on our heart. What are you guys doing at the moment? And we said, oh, we're about to do this thing with Christian surfers and leading leaders from around the Asia Pacific region. And they said, well, we'd love to support that. How can we support? And I said, well, maybe you'd want to financially support. And so they said, we'd love to. And so monthly people were giving to our salary, so we're able to do this. But then there was the small little thing of travel, because there is nothing quite beats leading people when you turn up. And so, yep, sure, a lot of my work is on Zoom because that's practical and it's cheap and efficient. And I'm meeting with leaders from around the Asia Pacific via Zoom, and that's great. But heading to Taiwan last year and being with their team and speaking with their leaders, it does something that is you can never achieve via Zoom. It was like, well, God, how are we gonna fund this thing? And it was also something that I really felt strongly. It wasn't for me to leave my wife and 4 kids behind and go travel the world and meet with leaders. I really felt like it was an opportunity for us to do this as a family. And the line that really sat with us was family on mission. And I was like, but we've always been a family on mission. And then it was like, what does it look like to be missional, to go to serve leaders and to see the gospel, the good news, go into these nations and to be able to use surfing, especially where you're not allowed to have church services, but you're allowed to have something called Christian Surfers, where you're, sharing faith in the water. And so I was sitting there one day, and I was like, God, how am I going to afford to travel, especially as a whole family? And he said, I've given you everything you need. I was like, what is that riddle? And I was sitting there, and I just look at my house, and we've been blessed to be able to get on the property market, and we own a beautiful house in Wellington. And I was like, oh, you mean like this? And so sure enough, a couple of days later, I listed our house on Airbnb just to see if anyone might be interested in renting it for a weekend. It's I've titled it a rustic family batch. It's rustic because it's definitely not new. I've built some of it out of driftwood, and it's a family batch because it's not as clean as some of the motels you might or hotels you might go and pay to stay at. But I think it's got character. And anyway, 3 days later, we got our first booking for 62 days, and I was like, what? And get this, 62 days at $395 a night. And they didn't blink an eyelid. It was a lady from America who was on her sabbatical, and her work was paying for her to go and write a book. And she said, your house looks very inspirational, and I could envision myself staying there for a few months and writing a book. And so all of a sudden, enough money came in that the transaction of us moving out of our house and she moves in, and we put 100% of the money from Airbnb onto flights to be able to go in August this year to Tahiti and speak at their national gathering and to encourage their leaders in Tahiti. And also, the Olympics is going to be held in Tahiti next year. And it's the first and probably only ever time that an Olympic event will be held in a Pacific island. And it's because Tahiti is French Polynesia and the Olympics are being held in France. And so somehow I've landed up with the awesome role of organizing the volunteer team to be able to serve the Olympic event in Tahiti. So I'm going in August to sort of suss it out, look at how we're going to do that, how we're best going to be available and actually of value to the event organizers to serve alongside the officials.
And all 6 of you are going?
All 6 of us are going. And it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if I could have justified it or found the money any other way, but because it was just as simple as, well, we'll try this thing out. We put it on Airbnb. I didn't even feel like the money was ours. It was like an instant transaction to be able to put it on to this trip that is obviously going to be ministry. Of course, there's hard places to go to for ministry, but this one doesn't look that hard, obviously. But our work is going to be connecting with leaders and serving the locals, and we're really excited about it. And so we had to be out of our house for 62 days. What do you do then, Stu?
Well, I know what you did. Yeah, you bought a caravan and you just decided to go on a road trip. I mean, how unreasonable is that? I mean, it's just, I mean, I think what you've just shown, I mean, that willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice again and again and again, it has just opened up such amazing opportunities for you and Mel and the kids, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And so, it was a big deal for us to move out of our home. And we said, kids, we're going to go do life on the road, because I didn't say, but, our house then got booked for another month, and then it got booked for 3 weeks, and then it's been booked for 6 months in one booking. Another person from America whose husband's working over here. And so we were like, we're not going to just crash on people's couches. We need to buy a caravan or something. And so this caravan's not huge, but it's got 2 sets of bunk beds and a table that folds away, and then it's a bed for us. And we ended up traveling around New Zealand and encouraging leaders, and spent a lot of time with the New Zealand Christian Surfers teams. And, we did school on the road through Google Classroom, and it's just been a phenomenal, it's coming up 6 months.
How have the kids adapted to that? Because I know, I mean, I know you've got everything from very little to school age. I mean, Charlotte Vine's now school age. She must have had to leave friends behind, and I mean, she had a big group of friends. And how did you help her manage that process?
Yeah, well, our oldest is 10, and then 6, 4, and 1. And for us, we've heard a lot of stories and known a lot of families that have taken their kids on, what we'd call ministry, traveling and sharing faith. And we've seen the good and we've seen the bad and the ugly. And for us, we were like, man, this is an opportunity to show our kids what true faith from our perspective looks like, is living by faith. It's, listening and being obedient to just step out and do something a bit crazy, like leave. I've born and bred in Wellington. I've gone on holidays, but I've never lived away from home. And this felt big. And so the way that we've tried our best to do it is to, along the way, share with the kids not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. And not just, that mum and dad have a meeting tonight, or we're meeting this family, or we're meeting these leaders, but why we're doing it, and what the purpose of it is, and what it is that we're actually sharing with these leaders, like why we're doing what we're doing. And so our kids are starting to to grapple with faith for themselves and what does it look like. And actually our oldest decided at Easter camp, Mel and I were sharing at the Christian Surfers Easter camp in Taranaki this year, and there was 220 people there, and on the Saturday our oldest came to us and she said, "Mum, Dad, I want to take my faith to the next level," and she decided to get baptized. And it was just such a beautiful thing to see her make that decision for herself, and we felt like she's old enough to understand what it is that she's actually saying yes to. And so on the Monday morning, Easter Monday, we got to take her into the ocean. We got our wetsuits on and we baptized our oldest daughter. It was phenomenal. And then we got in the car, we packed up the caravan, and that day we drove 12 and a half hours across the country through the crazy gorge of Gisborne, and we actually moved to the east coast to Gisborne because we felt the Lord inviting us a few months ago to a dual role. One part Christian Surfers, this global ministry, global serving leaders around the world, and also needing a local expression. And so here in Gisborne, we've got the opportunity to lead a local church called Wainui Beach Vineyard Church, and they meet in the local school hall, and it's an amazing group of about maybe 90 adults and kids, and it's so cool because each day it's this local expression, a global expression of ministry, and I feel like as a leader I'm able to have the both and more.
So you've moved out the caravan. Talk to me about the view behind you.
The caravan's now my office, and it's also our spare bed.
Well
so
done.
If you and Liz want to come up, you're welcome to stay in the caravan.
Yeah, we may well do that.
Here we are on the deck of Wainui Beach. You can actually see someone surfing taking off right now, and in a place that the Gisborne's just been struck with incredible devastation in the last few months, with flooding and roads being wiped out, and so there is a housing shortage already. And so we were like, how on earth, we felt like it was time to move to Gisborne, and had this invite, and we're like, maybe we're going to be living in our caravan because there's no houses available, and the only ones that were way out of our price range. And anyway, through the church, someone sent me a number and they said, call this lady. She's got a rental. And so I call her and I said, hey, I hear that you might have a rental in Gisborne. And she said, who gave you my number? I said, Maria. And she goes, I don't know Maria, and I don't have a rental. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry for wasting your time. We're just a young family from Wellington, feel like, God's invited us to come serve the local church, Wainui Beach Church. And she said, oh, tell me your story. And so on the phone, I started just to tell her our story and what we've been doing as a family the last few months. And she said, put it in an email and I'll get back to you tomorrow. Anyway, she calls me back the next day and she said, hey, my siblings and I, we'd like to rent you our house in Gisborne. It's our family batch, but no one's using it at the moment. And so we just feel like, we'd love to bless you and your family. And I'm going, what is the catch? How did that even happen? Anyway, she said, would you take it? And I said, yep, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then I was like, oh, wait, can you send me the address? And she sends me the address, and it's beachfront. And again, just we turn up pinching ourselves going, how is this even possible? She gave us a rate that's affordable for us, and she, as part of ministry, I think she was just hooking us up. But this is things that we didn't ever dream of and explore, and obviously this isn't everyone's story, and yet for me, the bottom line for me has always been love God, love people, and seek first the kingdom of God, and all else would be added to you. I've always just, as a leader, gone, God, what does it look like to steward what you've given us well? And so I have been clearing this huge hill and all the weeds and everything, and we're going to turn it into a space where we can have every Sunday afternoon just invite people to go surfing out front and then come back for a meal, and just create as much space and as much room as possible for meals every Sunday. And we'll just put on meals for the community. And again, that opportunity to share faith, not through Bible bashing or, ganging up on people and being like, do you know where you're going when you die, but just through relationship, through living demonstration of what it looks like to be a faith-filled Christian who is trying his best to live an authentic, real life, just be a demonstration in this community.
For all of the years I've known you, and this is just the latest example of you being an unstoppable force and you showing it through being unreasonable. You're making those what most people would consider bonkers decisions, but you're being unreasonable and continuing to raise the standard. I mean, just talking about clearing that area out the back, I mean, that to me looks like about a month's Anyway, I'll bring my weed whacker.
It's cutty grass, and so my legs are covered.
Shredded.
So, like, all the power tools doesn't cut it, so I had to do it manually.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I thought, I'll just stand on the top of it. Turns out there's no substance to it, and I fell through, cut my legs up, look like a real tool.
Again, you're raising that standard and giving the ultimate sacrifice day after day. Kirk, I mean, this has just been such... I'm so glad I got you onto to the TV show to bring a different lens to being unstoppable and sharing your stories about an organisation that probably most of us are unaware of. Even just the concept we're unaware of, and also bringing to life a different way to approach Christianity, faith, God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, absolutely great to have you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And obviously, it's a nice day. I don't want to waste too much more of your time. You should be out there dealing with that problem behind you. And I don't mean the ocean. One last question that every guest gets, and you know it's coming. If you were a superhero, who would you be?
I was thinking about this the whole episode because you threw it on me at the beginning. And to be honest, there's make-believe superheroes, but mate, Stu, you're a legend, and I reckon you're a bit of a superhero in my eyes, and I reckon I'll be like you, mate. That's my goal.
Thank you for all of that, and thank you for that kind note at the end.
Maybe just let people know they can Google Christian Surfers and just see if there's a local Christian Surfers near you, and connect in. And if you want to learn to surf, hit them up. If you want to, go surfing with people, because it's always more fun with people, hit them up and get into it. But yeah, it's an amazing ministry that does exactly what it says. It's Christians who love surfing and just love to see people connect into community through surfing. So thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot, Kirk. Brilliant. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, but more importantly, I hope you got something from it. As I say to clients at our workshops, if you take one phrase from one sentence that was uttered during that podcast, then this has been of value. If you're looking for more content, jump across to www.unstoppableforce.co.nz or find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. If you enjoyed this and you want more, we are live across New Zealand at events and workshops and sometimes in the US. If this has been valuable to become an unstoppable force, come along and reach beyond your limits.